Amazon is one of the largest online retailers in the world. They maintain a massive network of delivery trucks, warehouses, and workers. If they were a country, they would have a GDP worth roughly the same as Russia's. Now, in the last few months, the Amazon workers of Staten Island have come together and voted to unionize. Now, imagine if Amazon gets really angry and then in response sends thousands of trucks from corporate with armed guards and just blocked off the Verrazano Bridge, Gothel's Bridge, and the Outer Bridge crossing. At the same time, they put a fleet of Amazon boats in the water and surrounded Staten Island, preventing any ferries or personal ships from reaching it. Amazon would then maintain this blockade until the workers of Staten Island agreed to dissolve their union. That, of course, would never be allowed to happen in the States, unless we continue fighting over these culture wars and ignore the huge structural problems our political and economic system have created for us in the last few decades. At that point, our government will be so powerless in the face of these multinational corporations that they'll just let a company like Amazon carry out essentially military operations against its own workers. Why am I talking about this? Well, our Amazon Staten Island scenario is exactly what happens in Star Wars when the Trade Federation blockades Naboo. The Trade Federation at the time was angered by recent rulings in the Senate and also its own trade deals with Naboo. It decides to just blockade this sovereign planet in response. This is a power that should technically only be reserved for the Republic's military. In today's video, we're going to take a look at why the Republic was so powerless and just allowed a corporate entity to blockade an entire planet, a member state. Naboo is a sparsely populated and pristine world located in the mid-rim of the galaxy, and by mid-rim I basically mean right next to the outer rim. It was on the fringes. The Naboo senatorial delegation not only represented the planet, but 36 other star systems within the Chomal sector. But outside of the system, Naboo held very little real power or sway. While Naboo was culturally rich as a planet, it was a relatively undeveloped planet that lacked any strong industrial or tech sector. Its main exports were agricultural or culture items. That was until the late Republic period, when massive plasma reserves were uncovered in the mantle of the planet. The plasma had actually carved large networks of tunnels which ran through the center of the planet. The indigenous Gungan species had utilized this plasma to power all of their technology. On top of that, the plasma that Naboo had was extremely pure. That meant it burnt very clean and it fetched a premium on the energy markets. The only problem was that Naboo lacked the expertise and capital to develop the mining, refining, and shipping industries the planet needed to become a mass exporter. And if you can't scale up your energy production, well, you're just not going to be competitive on the larger markets, which is where the Trade Federation's expertise and infrastructure comes into play. They decide to help Naboo build their infrastructure. The Trade Federation started in the colony's regions in 350 BBY. This was actually a Republic-chartered organization that was tasked with mediating disputes between various shipping conglomerates in the galaxy. At the time, large shipping companies were trying to monopolize the hyperspace lanes. They would do petty things like refuse to share navigational data or even shut down spaceports to competitors. This isn't the type of competition you really want. The Federation, which was heavily populated by Neimoidians, managed to stop these abusive behaviors and stabilize the entire transportation industry. Now, the Trade Federation did this by organizing several other smaller trade cartels to face the larger trade cartels. And after this battle was done, the Trade Federation started going into the actual industry that they were supposed to overwatch and regulate. By 250 BBY, the Trade Federation had contacted Horsch and Kessel Drive Inc. and built a new fleet of LH-3210 cargo freighters. This freighter was a huge deal for the shipping industry at the time, one that did wonders for intergalactic trade in the same way that the Boeing 747 changed commercial flight here on Earth. And it all has to do with size and cost. The LH-3210 or Lucrehulk class freighter was around 3,000 meters in diameter, and it could carry up to 25 million metric tons. These large ships were a complete game changer and allowed the Trade Federation to enter an extremely cutthroat industry with high risks and low profit margins. By scaling up their capacity for trade, the TF was able to lower their costs tremendously and enter this very competitive market. At the same time, the free trade zone would be established in the Outer Rim by the Galactic Senate in 124 BBY. This was a long-neglected region of the galaxy that needed substantial capital investment to build infrastructure and communications. It also needed a security force to be present. The Senate, which was always running out of money and lacked a federal military force, was looking towards private individuals to basically develop these areas themselves with their own capital, and in return they would get a tax abatement or tax cut. The Trade Federation would jump at this opportunity. Instead of having to compete with existing trade companies in the Outer Rim, the Trade Federation were able to operate freely. Because again, the Republic just didn't have manpower out there. No one really cared about the Outer Rim. The Trade Federation, along with other companies like the Intergalactic Banking Clan and Techno Union, would shift most of their operations and assets out of the core regions where the cost of living and energy were rising drastically and shift their focus to developing the Outer Rim. Now, at the time, this area of the galaxy was very much like the Wild West. There were plenty of resources that you could harvest for huge profit, and there were plenty of bandits actually waiting for you to do that. And so there was a huge vacuum there where the federal government should have been, and the Trade Federation and other corporate entities basically filled in those shoes, which is not good. Companies like the Trade Federation would create an enforcement wing officially known as the Trade Defense Force. This organization was officially designed to protect Outer Rim shipping lanes and worlds from pirates. Unfortunately, the TDF's main reason for existence was not protecting the citizens of the Outer Rim. Its main reason for existence was protecting the Trade Federation, and so it was used constantly to seize assets from debtors, basically. And this was all done outside the supervision of the Republic. The banking clans and corporate alliance and other corporate entities also had their own military forces as well in this area, and they were pretty much allowed to do whatever they wanted. Soon, allegations of price fixing, indentured servitude, cannibalism, and other general misbehavior were being reported in the Outer Rim. The Trade Federation specifically was known for cutting predatory deals with smaller planets and outposts that essentially forced them to give up their economic self-determination. This was usually done through debt trapping. This is when a larger entity gives a smaller entity a loan for something that they know they'll never be able to pay back, and instead of basically being able to pay back these loans, these smaller entities just give up territory to the larger entities. And so the Trade Federation was able to seize a lot of territory. On top of that, the Trade Federation was notorious for hoarding hyperspace route information, which is ironic because that was the very activity they were created to stop. Special economic zones like the Free Trade Zone are not designed to be permanent. They're created with the mentality that one day there will be enough wealth and infrastructure there that it will be worth taxing once again. Of course, corporate entities who did risk large amounts of capital to basically connect the Outer Rim to the rest of the galaxy were angry about this possibility and were willing to go to extreme lengths to protect their new tax-free business model. First, in 67 BBY, the Senate tried to pass anti-monopoly reform laws that would make it easier for startup and small businesses to compete in the Outer Rim. Of course, this would be opposed by Damask Holdings. This was a major lobby that was actually backed by the Sith. They were also heavily invested in these Outer Rim companies. You see, after Darth Bane had created the Rule of Two Sith ideology, the idea was to stay in the shadows. Previous Sith empires made the mistake of thinking that the Republic could be defeated through military means when it really couldn't. It was just way too large. To truly control the Republic, you actually had to control its economy. And Damask Holdings for centuries had been secretly buying out and then supporting all of these Outer Rim corporations. The Free Trade Zone had allowed the Sith to exponentially increase the growth of their holdings for a period of time. The Trade Federation and other Outer Rim conglomerates would, however, accept the reforms put forth by the Republic Senate. This is most likely because Darth Plagueis' plan to take over the Republic was not prepared yet. In return, though, these corporations would gain membership status in the Senate. This is direct representation, mind you, one senator for one company. And on top of that, the Trade Federation had a lot of influence over all of these Outer Rim territories. Some of these worlds did have shared representation, and now these senators were also voting alongside the Trade Federation in a giant block, along with the other corporate entities. In 32 BBY, Prop 31814D was passed by the Galactic Senate. It removed the Free Trade Zone completely and brought back taxation to the Outer Rim. In retaliation, the Trade Federation blockaded Naboo. Unbeknownst to the Chancellor at the time, Finis Valorum, Senator Palpatine, aka Darth Sidious, had convinced the Trade Federation to carry out this attack and promised the organization great riches and wealth. Now, Senator Palpatine by this point in time had become a master in politics. While he wasn't completely visible on the larger stages, He was known as an important organizer of votes, and he knew how to create coalitions to bring changes in legislation. Palpatine also understood the ins and outs of the Republic bureaucracy and understood the power it had, including its ability to basically paralyze the Galactic Republic's response to the Trade Federation's blockade. Remember those giant Lucra Hulk-class freighters we were talking about before? Well, now they were blockading the planet Naboo and ferrying droids to the surface. The Trade Federation's goal here was to force Queen Padme Amidala to sign a treaty that would give them access to all of their plasma exports. If you think about it, the Republic would probably benefit from a Trade Federation takeover. They would care much less about the local wildlife and inhabitants and just ramp up production of plasma. This would lower the price of the energy and access in this region of space. The Trade Federation had, after all, built the infrastructure on the planet in the first place, so they knew exactly what they were doing. To make matters even worse, Naboo had a really serious shortage in food. This was due to the previous monarch, who was an isolationist. And so the blockade of Naboo also threatened to create a famine on the planet. The Galactic Senate and Finis Valorium should have reacted quickly to this. But Valorium was always a play-by-the-book type of individual who was deeply invested in the system. Even when dealing with nefarious individuals like New Gunray's faction of the Trade Federation, Valorium still tried to follow procedure. During the onset of the conflict, the only thing that the Republic could do was dispatch 2 ambassadors as neutral arbitrators to the conflict. The Trade Federation knew what they were doing was illegal and panicked, especially when Palpatine ordered them to try and kill the Jedi. Because the Jedi were technically representing the Republic, this should have immediately been considered an act of war and elicited a response from the central government. But once again, the Republic was useless, and this was all a part of Palpatine's plan: have the Trade Federation attack the Jedi, the symbol of Republic diplomacy, and make Finis Valorium look like a weak leader. By the time Padme escapes Naboo and arrives on Coruscant to make her impassioned speech in the Senate requesting military aid and support, it becomes apparent that the Republic will not be able to act in timely fashion. Palpatine continues to remind the Regent that corruption and bureaucracy made the Republic unable to do anything. The Trade Federation refutes Padme's claims in the Senate that they are actually blockading their planet. They request an independent commission to be appointed by the Senate to investigate the claims before they even discuss what to do about the situation. That Senate subcommittee would have to travel all the way to Naboo, somehow get around the blockade so they could see what was actually happening. They would then have to compile a report, which they would then have to send back to the Senate for the larger body to take a look at. It's only at that point that the Senate will be able to vote on intervention on Naboo. And again, remember, the Trade Federation is backed by the Sith. They have the backing of all those other corporate entities and all of the minor systems that they control through, nefarious means. And then there's the Mouse Holdings, which has its tentacles spread all across other worlds, even in the Mid-Rim and core worlds. This would significantly harm the Senate's ability to properly react to the situation. But even then, if there is political will to support Naboo, the Republic really lacks a standing military at this point, and the judicials just aren't well equipped to deal with an actual military blockade like the one the Separatists have created. And so the Republic would be more likely to rely on economic sanctions, which again would not have done much for Naboo immediately. And because the Trade Federation had access to thousands of droid fighters and Lucre-class battleships, there were people who questioned whether the Republic even had enough firepower to aggressively dislodge this blockade in the first place. This all leads Padme Amidala to conclude that the Republic was so ineffective by this point that it couldn't even intervene in what clearly was a hostile action taken against a member world by a corporation. And so if the Republic can't protect you, why believe in the Republic? Padme Amidala eventually calls for a vote of no confidence in Senator Finis Valorium. In his place, another leader would rise, one that was very different from him. This individual didn't care about procedure, tradition, or even the system. He seemed to just get things done, no matter what the cost was. The blockade of Naboo is a very important event in Star Wars history, and that's because it's like this small little microcosm which shows us all of the major problems that the Republic political and economic system was facing. Simply put, there was way too much corruption and bureaucracy, and you couldn't get basic, very practical things done, which is, in this case, was to prevent an invasion of one member state by another member. Well, guys, I hope you enjoyed today's episode. Don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification button down below so you don't miss out on the rest of our awesome content. As usual, my name is Alan, reminding you that my allegiance is to the Republic, to democracy.